Welcome to the Win Streaks preview and prediction of all 32 NFL teams for the upcoming 2017 season. Over the next few weeks, I will be covering all 32 teams, so please subscribe on the YouTube or the podcast platform you're listening on so you don't miss an episode. My name is Corey Foister. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Corey Foister. Follow the show on social media, Twitter at Winstreak News, Facebook.com/thewinstreak, thewinstreak.com. Leave a review on the podcast platform you're listening on and subscribe as well. Subscribe on YouTube. Our channel is Soaring Jets Production. Contact us at soaringjetsproduction@gmail.com. Join our fantasy football league. You can find out more information about that by visiting our Facebook page and our official website, thewinstreak.com. Top 10 Super Bowl matchup we want to see is now live. We do top 10 episodes and a weekly wrap-up show of all the latest sports news and happenings, so please check that out as well. We are a new podcast, The Win Streak. We're on YouTube, on iTunes, on Stitcher, on all kinds of platforms, so please check out our regular show. But for today, I am doing my 2017 Chicago Bears preview and predictions. Believe it or not, the Bears now hold the longest championship drought in Cleveland. The Chicago Bulls won multiple titles in the 1990s. The White Sox won the World Series in 2005. The Chicago Blackhawks won 3 Stanley Cup titles this decade, and the Cubs finally broke the curse in 2016. 1985 now feels like 1908 to Chicago fans. And it's really impressive feat for Chicago they had one of the longest droughts in all of professional sports with the White Sox, with the Cubs, and now all of these championship droughts have been broken, and now 1985 is the worst. And that, as a New York fan, our longest championship drought is 1969 with the New York Jets. So congratulations, Chicago, where 1985 is your longest drought now. This will be Chicago's 98th season in the NFL. This will be the third year under head coach John Fox and general manager Ryan Pace. Personally, to me, head coach John Fox might be one of the worst head coaches in the league. He did a good job in Carolina and with the Broncos, but he's completely destroyed his coaching legacy in Chicago. It is just really bad. It's a tire fire of a franchise right now. In 2016, the Bears finished fourth in the NFC North with a record of 3-13. They Pro Bowlers for the Bears in 2016. You had 2. You had Jordan Hayward, running back. Jordan Hayward is a absolute beast at running back, in my opinion. And Josh Stitton, line guard or left guard. Bears have suffered 2 consecutive 0-3 starts, not 0-13, though it feels like 0-13 might be possible this season for the Bears. But yeah, the Bears have suffered 2 consecutive 0-3 starts. Bears lead the league in injuries in 2016. A NFL high 19 players on injured reserve by the end of the 2016 season. So the good news for the Chicago Bears, you're going to be a lot healthier this year, because unless you can get 20 guys on injured reserve by the end of the season, but I don't know how that's possible. I don't even know how you get 19 guys on IR, but that just goes to show you how much bad luck the Chicago Bears franchise is in right now. The 3-13 record is the worst record for the Chicago franchise since 1978. The Bears went 0-8 on the road for the first time in franchise history. Bears' 3 home wins came against the Lions, the Vikings, and the Lions again. The win was good. The Lions win was the best, in my opinion, because it was against a playoff team. The Detroit Lions would go on and win or would win a wild card spot in the NFC. Bears are in a 6-year playoff drought. Last playoff game was 2010 NFC Championship game. Of course, they lost that to the Green Bay Packers that would go on and win the Super Bowl against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Bears are one of the NFL's best franchises. You could argue this is the Bears' darkest moment in franchise history, though. 5, 6, and 3 wins in their last 3 seasons. The Bears have won 9 NFL championships, including 1 Super Bowl. Of course, the Super Bowl being in 1985. The famous The Bears, Mike Ditka as head coach. Most enshrinees in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, most retired jersey numbers, most victories than any other NFL franchise. 4 conference championship, last being 2006, 18 division championships, 3 in the NFC North, 26 playoff appearances overall. Owner, the McCaskey family, they are not, to put it in the nicest way possible, they're not football smart. I think they are probably one of the worst family-owned operations in the NFL. Like I said, they've took a great storied franchise and completely, the Bears have been ran into the ground, and it's only going to get worse, I think, this season. Forbes ranks the Bears as the 8th most valuable franchise in the NFL at $2.7 billion in 2016. So that says a lot. Even though the Bears are a complete tire fire, they are still the 8th most valuable franchise in the NFL, and I would argue they would be easily in the top 3 if the Bears could actually resemble a somewhat decent football team. Biggest franchise, what if? Joe Montana and the Bears. In the 1974, or I should say the 1979 NFL draft, the Bears could have filled that void at quarterback and helped Walter Payton. GM Finks liked Montana but got cold feet in the 3rd round and didn't draft him. Of course, the 49ers would go on and draft Joe Montana. Joe Montana would win the San Francisco 49ers 4 Super Bowl titles. You had Ed McMahon, or not Ed McMahon, you had McMahon, I can't think of his name right now. He won you the Super Bowl in 1985, but granted, the offense and the quarterback was always a liability. You would have won multiple franchises with Joe Montana as your starting quarterback, especially with that Bears defense, but then having Joe Montana on the other side of the ball, the Bears would have just been nasty. They would have been a beast. And also, another thing, what if Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka got along? They would have been another Super Bowl title. You would have had Joe Montana at quarterback, Walter Payton, that crazy, one of the best defense assembled of all time in the NFL, Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka getting along, working together. They would have won at least 1, 2, maybe even 3 more Super Bowls. The 49ers would have probably not even won 1 Super Bowl out there with with Bill Walsh. Moving to the 2017 season, the Chicago Bears have an awful quarterback situation, even with Jay Cutler out of the picture. To make matters worse, Bears might have overpaid to bring 2 bad quarterbacks into Chicago. John Fox's seat as head coach is on fire. Mark Trestman was fired for going 13-19 in 2 seasons. Fox is already below that. In his first 2 seasons, he's 9-23. Fox could be the first head coach fired this season. I could completely see him out maybe as early as October, because the Bears are just a complete tire fire under John Fox. Bears made some surprising move at quarterback, signing Mike Glennon to a 3-year, $45 million contract and then trading up to draft Mitchell Trubisky. Chicago could have waited for 49ers to draft. They weren't going to draft Trubisky and spend $61 million to re-sign Brian Hoyer. I believe if they would have just waited and re-signed Brian Hoyer, their quarterback situation would actually be better because it wouldn't be damaging the future because you're not going anywhere this season, but now you've loaded up on more contract, and I'm not sold at all on Mitchell Trubisky. Uh, would have made a lot more sense, in my opinion, and not create headaches later down the road for this franchise. Bears also got Mark Sanchez. Uh, Mark Sanchez has pretty much proved with the New York Jets, especially with the Philadelphia Eagles, he can look good and he can beat crappy teams. But when it comes to beating playoff teams, don't count on Mark Sanchez. Biggest positive change, not much. That Jay Cutler contract being gone definitely helped the Bears, but then the Bears quickly overpaid for two more quarterbacks that might not be much better than Jay Cutler. Bears will be healthier than last year. Like I mentioned, 19 players on injured reserve. That is going to be hard to top. Jordan Howard, once again, looks amazing. He looks promising, probably the best player on the Bears roster going forward. Biggest negative change, losing Alshon Jeffrey to the Eagles, in my opinion, because now that's one less target. I think that Jeffrey was your best wide receiver. There's so much awfulness currently with this franchise, it's hard to really pick out a negative because the whole team was such a negative going 3-13 last year that it's hard to see how they really got worse. They didn't do what the Jets did and take out all their talent, but then again, in my opinion, the Jets had more talent than the Bears last season, so there's more to say about the Jets losing talent. There's more negative there than with the Bears, so you can't really say there's a lot of negative changes when there's not any changes at all. It's just all negative. I believe they will regret giving up so much for Mitchell Trubisky in the draft. Personally, to me, if anybody's going to be a bust in this draft that happened back in May, I think it's Mitchell Trubisky, but maybe I'm just being a Mitchell Trubisky hater. If you're a Bears fan, you better hope that Mitchell Trubisky is your franchise quarterback because you gave up a lot just to move up one pick. Schedule preseason Broncos at Cardinals at Titans. The at Titans game is going to be interesting because Jay Cutler will be the broadcaster for this game for Fox Sports. So it's going to be interesting what Jay Cutler might have to say about his former team because let's be honest, Jay Cutler, the city of Chicago, and the Bears organization, that was not a good breakup. That was a ugly breakup, and it's going to be interesting to see what Jay Cutler has to say about his former team, if he says anything at all. Jay Cutler has always been, in my opinion, kind of a boring guy, so it's kind of interesting that Fox Sports hired him, but he could make it interesting. If anything else, I'm not a big fan of preseason games, so maybe he goes on a Rodney Dangerfield, Don Rickles, 10-minute bid just burning the Chicago Bears ass. But once again, preseason, home for the Broncos, at Cardinals, at Titans, and then home for the Browns. Preseason schedule, I always like traveling the least, seeing you got to go down to Tennessee. That's not bad. Going all the way out to Arizona to play a preseason game, that's rough. Because I like in preseason having to play the least amount of games possible. So moving on to the regular season and my game-by-game prediction. The Chicago Bears have 3 primetime games at Packers on Thursday Night Football, home against the Vikings on ESPN Monday Night Football, and at Detroit on NFL Network. So 3 primetime games for a team that's not going to be that good. Chicago fans have to be happy. Personally, to me, being a Jets fan, I'm happy that the Jets only have one a Thursday Night Football primetime game because when my team's bad, I don't want to become a national embarrassment and have people making memes and just blasting my team's ass for 3-4 hours straight on social media. So maybe that's actually a curse for the Chicago Bears. Now, Chicago Bears might have the toughest starting schedule in 2017. And I think they could easily start 0-3 yet again. Because let's look here. September 10th, you start at home against the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are going to be extremely pissed off. They're going to be on a revenge tour about what happened there in Houston last year during the Super Bowl. So, best case, worst case, you're losing that game. Then September 17th at Tampa Bay. I'm really high on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers can be a wild card, potentially winning the NFC South this year. So, best case, worst case, you're losing to the Buccaneers. Home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't see how you beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Best case, worst case, you're losing against the Falcons in Tampa Bay and home against the Steelers. And then you finish this brutal month, September 28th, at Green Bay. Worst case, best case, you're losing all these games. So worst case, 0-4. Best case, in my opinion, 0-4. Bears have a really tough schedule. Three 2016 playoff teams, and all four have a good shot at being playoff teams this season. Falcons, of course, made it to the Super Bowl. You had the Steelers that made it to the AFC Championship, and you had the Packers that made it to the NFC Championship. So you have three of the four teams that made it to the championship, the conference championship game. You got to play in September to start your season. What a brutal, I don't know any team that's going to have a more brutal month than the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears are doomed to start 0-4. I mean, the only possible win you could possibly get is maybe at Tampa Bay if the Buccaneers are not as good as everybody thinks they're going to be. But even then, if the Tampa Bay Bucks are not going to have an excellent season, I still think the Bucks are going to beat the Bears. Going into October, you can only go up from such a awful tough September schedule. October 9th, home against the Vikings. They beat the Vikings. So, worst case scenario, I say the Vikings are going to beat you just because they have a better overall team. But best case scenario, I can actually see the Chicago Bears beating the Minnesota Vikings. At Baltimore, October 15th, worst case, best case, you are losing this game. The Ravens are not the Ravens of a couple years ago, but the Ravens are not a joke team. October 22nd, home against the Carolina Panthers. Worst case, you lose this game. Best case, I can actually see you upsetting the Carolina Panthers. I don't like how they fired their GM. They seems like there's a little bit of dysfunction with the Panthers franchise currently. October 29th at Saints. Worst case, you lose this game. Best case scenario, you win this game because these Saints, granted, you are playing in New Orleans, but their defense continues to be just god awful, just a complete joke. So you go and then a bye. And then you go into November. So I say, worst case scenario, you are 0-8. Best case scenario, you are 3-5. November 12th, you play the Packers at home. Best case, worst case, I say you lose this game. November 19th, home against the Lions. Best case, worst case, I say you lose that game also. November 26th, at Philadelphia Eagles. I really like what the Philadelphia Eagles are doing. I don't think they are technically a playoff team. They could, definitely contend for a wild card. But I say best case, worst case, you're losing this game. So you go into December. Worst case, still looking for a win at 0-11. Or best case scenario, you are 3-8. December now is a lot easier. Especially, nothing's as hard as September. I can see you netting some wins here in December, starting with December 3rd. Home against the 49ers. I say you beat the 49ers in Chicago. Best case, worst case, you win that game. December 10th at Cincinnati Bengals. Now, if this was in Chicago, I could see best case you actually pulling out an upset here. But the Bengals are known to drop games they should win in December, and that's why they don't get a first round bye, win the playoffs, get a division spot, get a first round bye. So it's possible, but best case, worst case, I say you're losing that game. I'm going to believe that the Bengals are somewhat competent this year until they make the playoffs. Of course, they can't get past the first round ever in the playoffs because that's just the Cincinnati Bengals for you. At Detroit, December 16th. Best case, worst case, I say you lose this game. December 24th, home against the Browns. Now, this is a shocker. I think worst case, you can possibly lose this game because I like the Cleveland Browns. I think the Cleveland Browns can be a good team, a 5-6, maybe even 7-win team. I like Hugh, their head coach. I like what they're doing at quarterback. They have potential. This is probably one of the best Browns roster in quite a while. Granted, I know that's not saying a lot because all these rosters in the past 5-6 years have been awful. But the Browns look like they are on the right track. So, worst case, you lose to the Browns. Best case, you still should probably beat the Cleveland Browns. But Chicago is going to be one of the worst teams this year in the NFL. So, it's going to be interesting to see. December 31st at Minnesota. Worst case, you lose this game. Best case, you win this game. So, best case scenario, I can see the Chicago Bears going 6-10. Worst case scenario, I can see the Bears only winning one game and pulling a Cleveland Browns record of 1-15. My final prediction, though, and I know Bears fans are not going to like this, 2-14. I think the Chicago Bears are probably going to be drafting first in the upcoming NFL draft in 2018. But, with that, if you still believe in Mitchell Trubisky, you can sell that because if Sam Darnold is going to come out from USC, is going to come out of this draft, you have a great situation you're going to fall in because some team like my New York Jets, maybe the Browns, there's a lot of teams out there that's going to be willing to give up a lot in order to draft Sam. If Sam even comes out, like I said, my final prediction 2-14. I say you beat the 49ers at home, but that September start, Falcons at Buccaneers, Steelers, and at Green Bay, is just amazingly tough. 3 of the 4 conference championship teams from last year, you got to play right out of the gate. And I think it's just going to wear you down. You could potentially upset the Vikings, maybe even the Lions in best case scenario. Potentially the Panthers. If you had the Saints at home, I'd give you more of a chance, but you're going to New Orleans in November. That is a extremely tough stretch with the Packers, the Lions, and at Philadelphia. You could potentially maybe upset the Bengals, maybe the Lions, but I'll give you the 49ers, and I'll throw in the Browns, potentially maybe the Saints or the Bengals being that other win you get. But it's a tough season if you are a Chicago Bears fan. It's really sad to see such a great franchise go down the tubes like this. And now, once again, I'm doing previews of all 32 teams. I got the Jets, of course, the Bears, the Redskins, the Chargers, the Bengals. There's all these teams coming up, like the Giants. So please check on out on our podcast feed, on iTunes, on Stitcher. That is The Win Streak. Also, follow us on social media. That is Twitter at Winstreak News, Facebook.com/TheWinstreak, TheWinstreak.com. Leave a review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening on. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Soaring Jets Productions. Contact us at soaringjetproductions@gmail.com. Join our Fantasy Football League. You can find more information out about our Fantasy Football League by going on our Facebook or our official website, top 10 Super Bowl matchups we want to see is now live on our podcast feed. It will soon be up on our YouTube channel, that is Soaring Jets Productions. Please check them out. Please check out my preview of all the other 32 NFL teams that are coming out all in July and August. But my name is Corey Foister. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Corey Foister. And this was my Chicago Bears 2017 preview. Until next time, keep winning, everybody.